Hello, everybody. It's the old bear from the old bear's den of Bigfoot. And since this is January 1st of 2024, we figured we would come to you in a live tonight, give you 5 accounts. And after each account, we will pick 5 questions. Or rather, Mrs. Bear will be picking the 5 questions. So if I was y'all, I'd be super nice to this little woman back here. I've been trying to be nice to her all day. It just ain't working. I'm just I'm just a terrible husband. Anyway, we are glad to be with y'all again. And since there's so many stories that we have to do tonight, we don't have to do them, but we want to do them for y'all. So we can start the year off right, let everybody know that we're still here. I know there haven't been a lot of videos coming out, but I've been saving these 5 accounts, and I hope you enjoy all of them. And if you got questions, be the first 5 to get your questions in at the end of the account. When I say, and there you have it, get your question in quick. So, what are we starting off with tonight, Mrs. Bear?
Can I say that one for last?
No, not really.
Okay. Okay. Hello, everybody. Happy New Year to you. We're going to start out with an account that we like to call the Alabama Creeper.
1 second. Can everybody hear her? She talks kind of low. If you can hear her, give me a 1 in the comments, please. Anybody? Can hear us? Hello? Oh.
There they go.
Oh, there they are. Okay. Thank you. So we're doing the
Alabama Creeper.
now this one's gotta give when we get there, I gotta do something so you'll get the full effect of this account. And just bear with me. I'm terrible at it.
That's the reason I wanted to save it till last.
Yeah. Sure. You like to embarrass your husband.
No. Never.
Anyway, the Alabama Creeper.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Oh boy. In this one, it comes out of Alabama. A family last year was deer hunting down in Alabama. And at every year when they go to deer hunt, the family gets together. Well, there's one cousin that is kind of the black sheep of the family. He married outside of what the family believed was best for him. And because of that, and him being so close to his cousin and owned the property, he always was the first one to show up on Sunday before they started hunting on the family on the old family farm, what was left of it. There's quite a bit of acreage. And so him and his wife, they didn't have any children. They went to the cousin's house. Now he has a few kids, and they showed up at his house on Sunday around 11 a.m., 11:30, and at 11:30 a.m., it's full daylight. So they're there, they're making preparations for everybody else to show up. Everybody's supposed to be there around 3 o'clock. And about 2 o'clock, the old men show up. I'm one of those nowadays, but we show up because dinner's going to be made. We want to get a good seat. close to what we enjoy the most. And so, in order to do that, they start showing up around 2. Then the rest of the family, the younger ones, start coming in. Ends up being 30 people there. They have dinner at 3 o'clock. Now, it's nothing extravagant. It's just a little bit. These are country folk. Biscuits, brown beans, stuff like that. Good American heartland food. Fried taters. Can't forget the fried taters with onions. Got to have the onions. So they are all together. Now, after everybody gets a plate full, now some of them had heaping plates about like I do, kind of stacked up. My wife can attest to that. I'm pretty good about eating, uh, especially since my wife cooks for an army and not just a platoon, for a battalion. Huh. Anyway, everybody eats. They all gather around the map of the farm, and it's got plotted on it where deer stands are at, which way drives should be done if they're done in an area, and so on and so forth. So all the men are doing this, and round about 6 o'clock, the last of them have gone home. Of course, the kids, the cousins' kids start going, "I'm hungry. We want pizza." Yay. Well, Neil, you better go grab you something real quick, because this is the
Beginning.
intro into the main part of the story. Okay?
You don't want to miss it.
Yeah, my wife's going to laugh at me. Anyways, there is a small town that has a little pizzeria. If you come down the cousin's driveway and hang a left, it takes you to the little town. And there's a convenience store right beside this pizzeria with a little gas station. So the 2 wives, they leave the kids there with the 2 men. The 2 men are still talking, and the kids are listening to them tell deer stories, and they did this and they got this real nice, and he's pointing to deer on the wall that he's got, and they're talking hunting, and the kids are all into it. So the 2 wives go to this little town. Now it's dark. It's getting dark, or it's dark. They go to town and they get pop and they call back to the house, see if the kids want a candy, something, what kind of pop they might want with their pizza. And they've already ordered the pizzas. So they go from the convenience store to getting all this junk, which I know all about because I've got grandchildren. And they go over to the pizzeria, pick up their 2 huge pizzas. Now, they're not the circular one. They're those big square pizzas in a sheet. And they pick up 2 of them. One with what the kids wanted on it, one what the parents wanted. Now, they got one with everything. I think they didn't throw the kitchen sink on it and anchovies, but other than that, they had everything else. So the 2 women head back to the house. And on the way back home, they get about a quarter of a mile from where they got to turn up the driveway. Well, the cousin's wife's sitting there talking, and they're not paying a whole lot of attention more than what is, the white line and the yellow line, and that's all they were paying attention to while they were driving. Well, they come around a little bend in the road, and she flips her high beams on because both sides of the road are covered with, they got pines on each side, so it's pretty dark. And it's kind of a moonlit night, not real bright, but there's more than just the normal amount of moonlight. And she flipped her high beams up, and at this point, she sees something off to the right of the road. She's like, "What's that? I didn't see that when we come out. What is that? Is that a person?" And it's kind of dark. It's dressed, it's got dark collars on, and they really can't see what it is. They don't know it's up there 100 yards or more in front of them. They just see a dark figure, and it starts walking across the road. Well, she's got her high beams on, and she's moving along at about 50 miles an hour. And she lets off the gas and starts slowing down. Well, the closer they get, this thing stops right in the middle of the road. And they see it standing there, and she just slams on the brake going, "What in the world?" And she comes to a halt, and the high beams are just like, it's all lit up now. The cousin's wife starts screaming at the top of her lungs. Now, the window is partly down on her side, and she's screaming. She's banging on the side of the door trying to get the window to go up. And the doors are locked because they all automatically, when you put it in drive in that vehicle. And she's hitting the down button. The wind is going down and down and down. And this thing just stands there and kind of looks at them. It leans down towards them, looks down at them in the car. They can clearly see the face of this thing. Now, it looks like a human type face. And it looks at them and it goes, does a big cheesy grin. And at this point, the cousin's wife is somehow she got composed enough to make a phone call. She's screaming in the phone, "It's going to kill us. It's going to kill us. We're at the end of the driveway. It's going to kill us." Well, both men jump, throw their boots on, tell the kids to stay in the house, and are starting down the driveway. Didn't think to jump in a truck and drive down. They're running down the driveway. One of them had grabbed a handgun and was going down there to find out what was going on. Well, at this point, this Bigfoot does the weirdest thing. It stands up on its front part of its feet and does this. Turns and takes little tiny steps. I know it's a bad impression. Takes little tiny steps and goes off the road. At that point, she floorboards it, turns right up the gravel driveway, car goes sideways, goes up to the house. The husbands, they pass the husbands. Well, the husbands turn around and run back up there. And at that point, it's kind of like, they're trying to find out what's going on. And the wives are like, "I don't know what it was," where they're screaming. They're panicked. They're losing it. So they finally get them in to go towards the house, and they grab the food and all the candy and the pop and take it in the house, and nothing happens the rest of the night. This Bigfoot had walked across the road away from their house. No big deal. So the next morning at about 4 a.m., the ladies get up, and the gentleman that I spoke to, his wife gets up and makes like 3 dozen biscuits for everybody that's coming to go deer hunting. And they make sausage biscuits, and they're making sausage and gravy, to put over top your bit, a country breakfast. And everybody shows up at about 5 a.m. And at 5 o'clock, everybody's done picked where they want to go. They take the older guys out on side by sides or four wheelers, and all of them go out and they get in their stands. And the younger guys, they go up where they're going, and there's no one close to the house. The women, and some of the women in the family came with their husbands, especially the older ones. They're grandmothers. One or two of them might be great grandmothers, and they're there, and they're making sure that if their men come in for lunch, that they'll be fed, which is normal for country folk. At least that's the way I was raised. And nothing happens. They shoot a few deer. They bring them in, take them to the barn, string them up, and letting the blood come out of them. They rip the hides off from them, and they're all checked in and they're all legal. And the ones that got a deer stay there at the house for the afternoon. Well, that afternoon, a younger guy, his dad had shot a deer and got his deer out of a certain stand. Well, the son said, "Dad, can I go and get in your stand?" "Yeah, son, you're more than welcome to use it. It's whoever wants to use it." He goes and gets in the stand. And about 3 o'clock, the radio that he has, the little handheld CB band radio, "Hey, we're going to be heading down your way. Be ready. We're going to try to walk some deer to you." Now, he's never killed a deer. Not with a rifle, anyway. I think he got a deer with a bow, and it was a young one 2 or 3 years before, and he's never shot a buck. And he's kind of excited. He's in his dad's stand, and his dad's already got a nice buck. And Dad said, "I saw 3 other bucks in there and everything." Well, about 3:10, after talking to him on the radio, he notices movement coming from this side, and he's looking, and he's like, "What is it?" Puts binoculars up, and he can't get. There's just too much tree limbs and brush in the way. Well, this Bigfoot, he doesn't know it's a Bigfoot. This creature comes walking closer to him, gets up behind a big old pine tree, and stops. This guy's looking, and he's trying to pick out, and he's like, "I see I see black. What? There ain't no deer around here black. Oh, it must be a bear. Had to be a bear, right?"
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
At least that's what the federal government and state government tells us. It's a bear. No, it's not a bear. Anyway, this Bigfoot goes back into the T-Rex mode, walking on its toes and tiptoes out from behind the tree, turns and faces the guy sitting in the tree stand, and is standing there on his tiptoes with its little arms up, like, "Rawr, rawr, T-Rex, rawr." See, I told you she was going to laugh at me. So,
Yeah, but it's better when he gets up and walks.
I'm not doing that. No. I love all of you, but I have to draw the line somewhere. Anyway, he goes and he's like, he's completely lost. He doesn't know what he's looking at. He doesn't understand what it is. And he's afraid. Even though he's got a high-powered rifle in his hand, he's afraid. Because he doesn't know what to do. He's not that experienced in the woods to understand that as long as it doesn't come at him, leave it alone, just watch it and let it go away, and you'll be good. So finally, this Bigfoot grins at him, turns on its toes, the front part of its feet, and then tiptoes off towards the house. Well, he gets on the radio and he's going, somebody might want to come down here. There was a very strange thing that just happened, and the people at the house are hearing this on their radios, and they're like, "Did he lose his mind? Is there something wrong with your boy?" And guys that are in the woods, they're coming his way because they clearly he's in distress. So the old guys get up on the porch. They're sitting on the porch, and all of them, there's 4 or 5 of them out there. They get up, and one of the women comes out with coffee cups on a tray. She comes to the front door. The front door shuts behind her. She turns to the right, and then she kind of turns back straight and looks off to her left like she saw something move. She screams, and all the coffee cups fall to the front porch with the tray. These old guys look up, and what do they see? Tiptoes clear across the front yard. These guys, these old men, God bless their hearts. From what I understand, they looked like the Keystone Cops from Charlie Chaplin movies, bouncing into each other, trying to go find their gun. Some of them had guns on the front porch that are empty. You know, they're unloaded. They're at the house. They're fumbling, trying to put rounds in these guns, and bullets are all over the front porch. Finally, the rest of the men show up that were out, the younger guys that were out in the woods, and they come to the house after they collected the one guy that just about, well, he had wet pants. Uh, whoops. They get there and they go to the porch, and they're all standing around, and they're like, "What in the world is going on? You, dad, uncle, what's going on? Y'all look like a bunch of Keystone Cops bouncing off each other." And they're like, "This big hairy thing come, this big old booger come across the yard, and we were going to shoot it to protect our families." And they're like, "Dad, there isn't anything such as a booger." Well, all the women and the kids are in the house because that one woman that dropped the coffee, the coffee pot and the mugs of coffee and the tray on the porch, went inside screaming, going hysterical. Everybody in the house is losing it. Well, everything's straight. They get in there and get all the women and the kids all calmed down, and the old guys are out front, and they're retelling what happened for the 10th time. It's about dark. They go out, the ones that got deer, they're going out to the barn and putting their deer in the back of their trucks, and they're going to go take them to the processor and all this, and everybody else is going home, and they're all kind of talking out front, and the deer are already in the trucks done pulled down from the barn, and somebody goes, "Hey, Grandpa, what's that?" Well, Mr. T-Rex arms and grinny face comes sneaking back across the yard, just bouncing along. Once he gets out of sight across the other side of the yard, everybody kind of leaves quickly. And the two cousins are there with their wives, and then they've made a pact. They're going to stay up all night, drink all the coffee, stay up all night, protect their families. That's fine. Nothing happened. So at this point, most of these guys are supposed to come back the next day. 2 guys out of 12 showed up. 1 second. Okay. A Bigfoot with brain damage. Yeah. To be acting like a T-Rex, man, had to have a lot of brain damage. So they start hunting. Nothing happened the rest of the week. Never saw it. Never. Nobody saw this Bigfoot. So the word gets around the family, the guys that didn't get a deer, and they all call and say, "We're coming back on Saturday, and we had things we had to do." They're making excuses of reasons they didn't come, and they show up on Saturday morning. And on the way, the last 3 young guys coming up from the way the pizzeria is have to slam on the brakes right before the driveway. Here's that Bigfoot. Yeah, Charmaine, that's about right. I wasn't scared. You were scared, not me. I was just, I had things I had to do. Well, the 3 young guys, there's 2 18-year-olds and probably a 15, 16-year-old boy. And they slam on the brakes, and here's this Bigfoot standing in the middle of the road. Well, all the fun starts. They swerve around this Bigfoot because it had stepped in the lane that they were traveling in. They went in the other lane, slammed the brakes on, did a pit maneuver. I don't know what you would call it, but they got up the driveway and they're like, "You ain't gonna believe it! It's back! It's back! It's back! It's back!" Most of them leave. The cousins, the 2 old, middle-aged cousins, they go out in the woods and they don't find nothing. They don't find this creature, nothing. Thing doesn't come by the house. So they take up stands in the afternoon close to where the house is to be protective over their families. Well, the one cousin that's the black sheep of the family, he sees it and he's like, "This thing hasn't done a thing to anybody. I'm not going to shoot this thing." And he calls his cousin on the radio and tells him. The cousin's like, "Yeah, you're right. It hasn't done anything. It's just scared the daylights out of everybody." So they leave it alone. It disappeared. They haven't seen it since. So that's the end of the story. So if you got a question, type it out in all caps, and my wife will pick 5 questions about this account, and we will answer them. Come on, give us a question. Somebody. Out of 48 people, you got to know these questions. Come on. Got anything?
Not yet, but I'm sure somebody's going to come through.
Well, we'll give them a minute. When we get 31 minutes into this, we're going to move to the next account. And they get progressively worse. No, they didn't throw any pizza down. It was coffee, the coffee pot and coffee cups that she dropped on the front porch. There was no pizza thrown. The pizza was in the car, and the two male cousins, they took it out of the car. I think this one had a sense of brain damage, John. That's the only thing that I can come up with. It was either Down syndrome or something that was wrong with this Bigfoot, and it thought it was funny to scare people by acting like a T-Rex walking across the yard on its toes. That's all I can. Alabama, northern Alabama, off from what was that interstate that runs down there out of Nashville? 65, actually, just about 35 miles inside of Alabama line. Does that help you, Julie? Well, Ruth, I can't.
Join the club.
Yeah,
Join the club.
she's every time we've talked about this one, it's like she turns into a laughing mess. All right. Any more questions? That's been 3. What's the next one?
The next one we have for you tonight is Pennsylvania Pipeline.
Oh, yeah. Let's see. Oh, okay. Yeah, this one is kind of fun. Y'all ready? Shoot me a yes if you're ready for the next one. Anybody? Just a yes.
They're too busy laughing.
Yeah, I know. They're having a hard time getting back to the why yes. Thank you, Charmaine. All right, in the Pennsylvania pipeline, Bigfoot, this work crew, um, there's a man and his wife. Wasn't it a man and his wife?
I think so.
And then 2 other guys that work on the work crew for a pipeline. Now they have to go up and fix something on this pipeline, and it's going to take them 5 or 6 days to fix it. So the man and the woman, they got a big, huge camper, one of the big long ones, the pull behinds, and he's got a 1-ton dually that he pulls it with. So they take it up there, they set it up, get everything ready. These other guys come in and they bring food and bed clothes and clothes for them, and it kind of gives them a base of operations for the type of work they do on a pipeline. Now they're fixing something that broke, so they have to go and find out what broke the next morning. They go up there. The wife stays down there. These 3 guys go up and they find out what's wrong, and then they come back and they go down the road where they get signal and they call the boss, tell him what they're going to need, and he brings it up late that evening. So they can't work on it. They kind of waste a day because of this. They're sitting around a campfire that night and they heard something strange.
What did they hear?
And they heard a howl, is what they called it. One of them said they didn't know they had wolves in Pennsylvania. They don't. Not that I know of. So anyway, they kind of just blow it off, and they all head off to bed, and sometime around 2 in the morning, maybe 3. I'm not sure. They didn't look at the clock. They said they knew it was pretty late at night. So somebody gets up to go to the little boy's room or the little girl's room, and they hear something outside. Well, there's enough of the fire left, the last bit of fire that they had in their fire pit, that's throwing a little bit of light out. And they see this figure when they looked out the window, looking through the blind, and this person's like, "Hey, there's somebody outside." Well, at this point, everybody jumps up and they grab whatever firearm they had. The 3 men grab a firearm and they pile out the camper. They get out there, they don't see anything, they don't hear nothing. So they kind of mess around outside looking to see if what it is left footprints, and it's bone dry. There's no footprints to be seen. And they check the vehicles, and they check around the camper, nothing's missing. So they go back to bed. Night 1. Night 2. The next day they go up and they're up there and they get this pipeline apart. Now the pipeline is shut off while they're fixing it because it was a leak and it threw an indicator on us. Something. It did something, it automatically shuts off. And then they locked it out and tagged it out in 2 different places to keep from the natural gas going through the line. So that way they don't go boom. And at that point, they're getting it apart, and they've got to rebuild this valve. Is what was leaking. It was a valve. And it's an automatic valve that has an electric line goes into it, which is sealed, and it's separate from the metal line, and it runs through a metal aluminum conduit, and it's wrapped in plastic, and the line comes in, and it feeds that automatic valve power. So they're working on it. They get it almost done. They're thinking we're going to get done early. We're going to get out of here tomorrow. We'll finish this up first thing in the morning. We'll pack up. We can leave. Well, that night, they hear that strange howl again. This time it's a lot closer to their camp. Everybody kind of gets up, and it was fairly early when they heard it, and they're kind of like, I'm tired. I'm going to go to bed. Everybody kind of piles in, and the man and woman play gin rummy, a couple of hands of gin rummy. Nothing happens. Well, about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, camper gets rocked. One guy actually fell out of bed because of it. It was rocked that hard. So at this point, everybody jumps up. The men start filing outside, flipping all the lights on the camper on, and that are on the outside of it. It's got an awning on it. It's got lights on it. It's got lights at each end of it. It lights up the area pretty good. And they go out and they don't see nothing. Well, they're standing out there, and all of a sudden one of them, "Man, what are you throwing stuff at me for?" And the guy looks at him and goes, "I didn't throw nothing at you. What is your problem?" "Well, what the heck's throwing stuff at me?" Well, he's getting low. Something comes through the air, and he sees it, and it smacks him right in the forehead. It's one of those little tiny pine cones. It comes off a pine tree. And he's going, "Dude, I saw what you throw. Why are you throwing them little pine cones?" He said, "Man, I'm not throwing nothing at you. Do you see me over there near the pines?" And they kind of look at each other, and they turn and look at the pines, and there's a really big thing standing there, and its eyes are red. Not a good situation. They only have handguns, and not very big ones either. So all of a sudden, this thing growls at them, and they run around and they're trying to get in the camper. They get in the camper, and the guy tells his wife, let's go. Get your stuff on. We're leaving." And they all go pile out in one car. The dually, because it's a full size double cab. They all pile into that truck and head down the road. Well, they go down the road and they get almost into the little town there, and there's a little boarding house. I don't know if it's a boarding house or one of those little roadside motels. And they spend the rest of the night there. It's 10 o'clock, 10:30 at night, and they don't got no luggage or nothing, and they're just wanting 2 rooms with double beds, and that's what they got. And they paid for it. And they're like, next morning at 8 o'clock, we'll leave here, go up there, hook the camper up, finish that job up, and we'll get out of here. Well, they get up there the next morning, and the other truck that they left there's a ditch. The truck is shoved into the ditch. The camper is shoved off the jacks. The jacks are bent, and it's kind of sitting there in front of you. Well, they get it hooked up to the truck, and after they pulled the other truck out of the ditch, they got everything gathered up, and then they went into the woods with firearms. Went up there and finished that out, covered it back up, left. Well, on the way out, pulling the camper and the other trucks behind them, this Bigfoot steps out in the middle of the road, slams on the brakes, and the woman screams, and the thing looks at her and just goes, doesn't make a noise, just threw its mouth open and looked at her. She shuts up automatically, and then it just kind of just turns and looks at him and heads off stage right. So if you got a question, give me one. Give me a chance to get a drink.
Me too.
Any questions? Capital letters, guys. Makes it easy on an old man and his old eyes. Data, we're going to go to Missouri for the next one. In fact, the next 2, right?
Yes.
We got a Momo story next. If y'all want to go to the next one, tell me. Just say yes. Are you keeping up on the comments over there, short stuff?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Nothing has changed yet.
Okay. How about we just... All right, they're ready for the next one.
Okay, yep. There they go.
This one's kind of sick. The Missouri monster, known as Momo. And this one, we got a family farm. The man works out of town sometimes, and his wife, and they have, what is it, a boy and a girl, but the boy's little. And so at this point, dad's out of town, mom's out there, and the daughter has a horse that she rides. It's not a full-sized horse, but it's not a Shetland pony either. It's just a younger horse. It's not full sized. And she goes out with mom's graces and goes out to the barn, pulls her horse out of the stable. And by this time, mom and the little brother are out there, and mom helps her put the saddle on. And the little girl goes round and around and around in the riding pen. She loves to ride her horse, and the horse loves her to death or whatever. And, they have a very good friendship. She's riding around, and all of a sudden, mom's there tending to the little boy. She's feeding the chickens and the goats and the the geese, and because they got a pond, it's got 4 or 5 geese they have in it, and uh, she's throwing chicken feed out. She's feeding the goats hay, uh, and then she's going to go up to the barn. And that way, whenever she goes to the barn, the daughter's supposed to come up there and ride right straight up to the barn, and then she'll brush her horse down and get him all cooled off, and then she'll put him in the stall and they'll feed him, and then they'll go to the house. So mom turns around and says, "Hey, time to go to the barn." A little girl is stopped, already sitting there in the little corral, and she's looking in the woods, and and mom could tell something was wrong. Moms just have that sense that something's wrong with my baby, and and it's the mom thing. Dads have it too when it comes to your kids. And mom's like, "What's wrong?" And the little girl just kind of turns and looks at her mother, and then she turns back and she's staring at something. Mom can't see it from where she's at because evidently the tree that this thing is leaning out from is blocking her view to where it's at because it's outside the corral. Well, the little girl finally gets the horse to back up. Most of the time horses don't like to go in reverse, but this horse went in reverse. It took 5 or 6 steps, and then it whirled around and ran to the barn. And the little girl's doing everything she can to stay on this horse. Well, mom freaks out, and she looks over at the woods, and this thing steps out. She screams, runs to the barn. Now, the barn only has a small door on the front and the big barn doors on the front. There's no other doors but those doors on that barn. It's because it's not a big barn. Well, the horse goes right through the big doors. Mom slams both of these doors, throws the hook in it, throws the board that holds the door shut, jerks the little door shut, and she gets on the phone and she's calling the local police. Well, by the time the cops show up, this creature's gone. Well, she comes out, and when she gets up to the house, she calls her husband, calls him where he's at, tells him he needs to come home right now. He knew that tone of voice. Something was wrong. Something had scared her, and she didn't get scared easy. And so he gets on the first plane that night, and he gets back to the airport probably around 2 a.m., I think he told me. He drives home. it's an hour drive or hour and a half drive for him to get home. So it's 3:30 something to 4 when he finally gets to the house. I don't even think he weighed on his baggage. So at that point, he gets home, goes in the house, talks to his wife because she's up. You know, they own a farm. They get up fairly early. She's trying to describe this creature to her husband. It's not sinking in very quick. And he's like, hey, you just saw a bear, you saw something, and you thought it was something else, you know, just. And she looks at her husband and goes, no, no, that was enough. That could have grabbed our little girl or our daughter. It could have grabbed me. We're going to mom's. Now, mom lives 2.5 hours away. So at daylight, the husband agrees, go to mom's, and I'll let you know when it's safe to come home. So he goes out later that day and he fed his chickens that morning, fed the geese. And then that afternoon he goes out and he feeds the few cattle that he has there in a big field. He puts out a round bale for them because it's that time of the year they have to feed the cows. And then he goes out there to the barn and opens the big door. Well, he goes into where the horses are. There's a big mare in there, and then the horse for the little girl. And if you got kids in the room, send them out for the next 10 to 20 seconds. He goes in there, and the mare is backed up in the corner of her stall, and she's got this wild, eyes bugging out of her head. And it was kind of, and she stinks. I mean, really reeks enough to make him sick to his stomach. Now he's in a barn. You ever been in a barn with a couple of horses? It's kind of bad. It was worse than that. Way worse, according to him. Well, the mayor, he goes into where the little girl's horse is, and it's scared. It's intimidated. These horses have been through something. They go in there, and he touches the mare, and she just rears up and is ready. He backs away from her, and when she reared up, he saw like some bruising and marks on her left side. And finally gets her calmed down, pulled down the rope around her head, calms her down. She's calming down for him, and he takes her outside. Well, she's got those bruises and marks like something with nails had grabbed a hold of her and was holding her on each side and had cut her with nails. And he's looking over the horse. He calls the vet. Now, when he made this phone call, he didn't know what to tell the vet. The vet comes out and looks over this horse, this mare. In fact, she looked over both of them. And she said, do you got a big stud horse? No, we only got this mare and this young gelding. Now, a gelding can't do anything like that. They don't have that function. It's the reason they're a gelding. And, well, something attacked your horse, and it's not pretty. I'll say that and we'll leave that there. You can figure that on your own. And so the vet leaves, gives him some medication to put in her feed to keep her calm so she can recuperate from this. And he's not in a very good mood. So he goes out, he takes the gelding out, the daughter's horse that she rides, takes him out there in the riding pen and puts him on a rope and lets him run around in circles. Now he does this for a little while and it starts getting dark. So he starts to leave the pen. And when he did, the horse rears up on him. Like, I'm not going that way. Just, no, not doing it. And he's looking around and finally he sees what this horse sees. Big, dark, brown, hair all over, brow ridge, deep inset eyes, looked like they were black, thin pursed lips, wrinkly face, and it's standing there staring at him like, just like I am. All wrinkles, worse than me. Stop shaking your head. And he's not intimidated, but he's aware that it could be a lot of trouble. So he goes and takes this gelding, and they run up to the barn. He puts the gelding in its stall, shuts the doors, makes sure that the doors are locked, because evidently they left the doors open the night before. Because when he got down that morning, the door was open. Now, this is a 9-foot tall door. He runs to the house. He grabs a rifle, loads the rifle, and it's still daylight enough to see. Maybe not well enough to see open sights, but he goes out there and this thing's standing in that little corral. And it sees him coming. And it takes off and it runs and jumps a 5-foot fence. No problem at all. And never missed a stride. Hits the wood and it keeps going. He loses sight of it. He throws a couple rounds at it anyway. Well, the next morning he goes out. Now, the barn doors are locked from the inside. The only door to get through is the man door, the man-sized door, 6-foot tall door, and that's it. The man door is ripped off the barn. He hears that mare in there. She's freaking out. He runs to the barn, and by the time he gets there, this mare is no longer alive. She didn't make it. Whatever had happened to her, it had caused her to evidently her heart explode, or something happened to her that the trauma and heart exploding and so on and so forth, it kills the horse. I have no idea. He didn't see anything come out of the barn. Now, the big doors are still locked, but the little door was ripped off the hinges. So he goes back to the house. He grabs that rifle and he fully loads it. And he carries it with him all day long across his shoulder. He never sets it down. And that afternoon, he doesn't even take the gelding out to let him work out in the pen. So everything on that he's supposed to do, he's fed all the other animals. Now a couple of their chickens have disappeared. They had 12 chickens. They're down to 10 now. And right about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, he's out there doing something, mending a fence or something. And he's got the rifle across his, from one shoulder down to here, down across. The straps across him like that. He looks up, and that creature is standing there looking at him. Now, I don't know if it didn't see the rifle behind him, but he slips it off over across his head, and he picks the rifle up and he shoots. That's a 45-70 lever action. He starts throwing lead at this thing. This thing starts running towards the trees. And he stops shooting. Well, this thing turns and starts towards him. And it comes across that 5-foot tall fence, no problem. And it's coming at an angle towards him from like this way here. He's standing here, and it's coming like this at an angle towards him. Sorry, babe. And he gets 2 or 3 rounds in, jacks one in the chamber, and takes a dead beat on it, and boom, this thing stops. It dropped to one knee. Then it got back up, and it kind of hobbled off. He goes to the house, gets more shells, loads that rifle, and puts 8 or 9 more in his pocket. He calls the police, the county sheriffs. County sheriffs show up, goes out there and says, it was a big hairy thing. It wasn't a bear. It wasn't a man, but it sure in the heck looks ugly as all get out. The deputy sheriffs are going, yeah, right, whatever. The typical reaction you get. And at that point, they notice blood. Now there's blood across that riding pin. It's bleeding pretty good. Well, the deputies say, you stay here at your house. We're going to follow this blood into the woods. Now, both of them one of them has a shotgun, and one of them has an AR. They go in the woods, and about 100 yards in, he starts hearing boom, 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 boom. A few minutes later, the deputies come, not running, but come out of the woods pretty quick. And he says, well, what, did you get it? Did you get it? Did you kill the thing? No, it was just a bear. It's just a marauding bear. There'll be somebody here to take care of that bear a little bit later on tonight. So if you see anybody, please don't shoot them. That's an awful lot of paperwork. Well, later that night, he's looking, he's sitting in his front room. He sees a vehicle go past. It's 10 o'clock. Not very many vehicles out that time of night in that area. He gets up. He notices that it had brake lights on, like it was slowing down. Well, it stops at the other end of his yard. Front of the house faces the main road. It stops at the other end of the yard. And then it backs up, comes up his driveway. Okay, it's them guys. I'll go out and talk to them. Well, he starts off the front door, and first thing they say is, sir, go back in your home. We're here to take care of that bear. And he's kind of leery about this. So he looks out the windows, and there's 6 guys that get out of this van. And they're not wearing sheriff's uniforms. They're not wearing state trooper uniforms. They're wearing military fatigues. They go in the woods, and he's sitting there, and they're gone for probably an hour and a half, almost 2 hours. And then when they come back, they're not carrying anything. And he kind of goes out the back door and he says, "Hey, what's going on? What'd y'all do with that thing?" "Sir, we took care of it. Don't worry about it. You have nothing to worry about. Just go on back inside and you'll be fine. There won't be no more trouble." Well, the next day he calls his wife and tells her, "Come on home." So she does. He tells her what happened. And then one of those deputy sheriffs that were there the night before stops by, and he's told in no uncertain terms not to mention it, not to talk about it. That's right, Jimmy. Don't feed the Bigfoot. Not a good thing. So, they've been told and warned not to talk about this. I talked to this man face to face. You can see the fear in his eyes when he's talking about this thing. You can hear the fear in the wife's voice on the phone when she talks about it. Little girl is still traumatized. Uh, so if you got any questions, all caps, Mrs. Barrel Pick'em. 5 questions y'all can ask. I mean, y'all can ask anything about any of the other ones, and I'll still answer it. But you can ask 5 questions about this, and we'll move to the 4th one. Nothing? That's right, Diane. Government didn't want it out there. With Vias, it happened. What was it? In 2022 in Missouri, central Missouri. That's all I can tell you. Near I-44. Chris, I can't tell you because I do not know. They just said it was taken care of and told him not to go out into that area. Evidently, that was someone else's property. And because his house sat at one corner and then the rest of his property went that way down the road. So the fence line was not his. The fence line was his, but the property on the other side of the fence was not his. So he never went to look. He was afraid that they'd come back and do something to his family. I'd say they had to bury it or burn it, put it in a pit, dig a hole, and then probably dropped it in. That's funny, John. That is funny.
That's hilarious.
All right. Y'all done with questions? Want the next one? And while we're doing this one, I'm going to ask Mrs. Bear to do me a favor.
Which is?
Can I get some more water,
Sure.
please?
You sure can.
See how nice I had to be?
You don't want me to pour it over.
Now, that's why I'm being nice.
Yes, sir.
And the next one that she's got in line here is the molester Bigfoot from Missouri. Alrighty. Yeah, this one ain't a real good one. This lady in her, oh, I can't remember. She's late 20s, maybe early 30s. Loves to go camping. Now, when she goes, thank you, my dear.
You're welcome.
And when she goes camping, she does some really strange things. When she goes camping, she decides that she wants to be the fairy of the woods. Let me premise this. That's right, Jimmy. I've heard of it also, and I've seen it. They braid their manes. Um, in order to become the fairy, she wears boots and socks and nothing else. She takes care of her feet, but the rest of her, there's nothing on. Happy New Year. Yeah, Neil, I know. Yeah, she's a little bit flaky, a little bit strange. She is a, can I say the profession she's in? Well, if I don't say it, it's why don't you tell them the profession she's in? You remember? Book, bunch of wording, stuff we're supposed to obey in this country. No,
Lawyer.
yeah, I didn't have to say it. Did y'all hear that? She's one of them city people. Doesn't think there's a Bigfoot in the world. Yes, chap. Yeah, chap butt cheeks. Yeah. Anyway, this woman, she when she goes camping, she doesn't camp in traditional campsites. She always goes way out on a trail, and this time she's doing it in Missouri and one of the national forests that are there in Missouri. And I'm not telling the forest because I don't. We don't need y'all going out there and not knowing enough about Bigfoot yet. Right, Neil. Yeah, I had to talk to this woman face to face. Yeah, she's a little strange. I'll just say that. She's a little strange. She's very book smart, but she has no common sense. None. Anyway, and she's single. So if anybody wants to marry her, you got to find her in Missouri. She lives in the capital city. Does that tell you anything? She has an office in a couple of different places. And let me scoot you guys a little bit closer so I can make sure that you're hearing everything that you need to hear. So she's a professional. She goes out in the woods. She takes 2 weeks a summer, 1 week in early summer and one in late summer. This happened to be the one in late summer. It's around Memorial Day. John, I thought of anyone, it would have been you that would have jumped at the chance to marry a professional. Just just saying, man. You never know. She's blonde. No takers? Okay. We'll leave it at that. Ah, keep me single in Ohio. Okay, giant Jimmy. All right. Anyway, um, enough picking on you guys. I'll stop. Hey, Randy. Anyway, what happened is she goes up this trail, and the trail kind of veers off and does a big loop around this hill. Well, she cuts off to the left. When it starts to loop back to the right and go uphill, she goes and follows this hollow off to the left. She goes up through there until she comes to this creek. Now it's there's an opening. It's not a big opening next to the creek, but it's sandy, and it's got rocks in it. The little river rocks and the little tiny river rocks. And she likes the campsite. She thinks this is where I want to camp. And she builds a little fire. She goes in her tent after she got it up, and she situates her air mattress and her sleeping bag and all this stuff, and unpacks her backpack. And she's got food for a week. It's just those meals that you can pour hot water in. And she's got water, and she's got a purifier with her for the stream, water out of the stream, purified, and she could drink it. And if it got down to it, she could purify the water by boiling it, because she's got one of those little, stoves you put a propane tank on or a butane tank on, and strike it, and it lights. And she's got everything she needs for a week. She's even got lights, and she's got a little solar panel that she can charge her phone, or charge the light batteries, because it works off from one of those little power packs. She's got two or three of them with her. And the first night, after getting all of her area cleaned up, ready to go for her, she then does her normal activity of, it's before it's dark. She goes down to the little stream. She takes a little bath in the cool water of the stream. Doesn't put her clothes back on, just her boots and her socks. Goes back to her tent, fixes her dinner, and while she's eating her dinner, she hears, okay, that's a little strange. She doesn't think anything about it. So she just throws a little bit more wood. Now she's gathered a bunch of wood after before she did her tent. She throws some more wood on it, thinking that'll keep predators away. She doesn't carry a gun. She doesn't know how to even load a gun. And so at this point, she goes in her tent, and she decides that she's aroused. Let's say that. Remember what I told you?
Yes, I do
Okay.
remember.
And so she does her thing. I told you it was weird. Don't blame me. Well, while she's in there, she's hearing, uh, 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 uh. Sorry. I can't help it. It's kind of funny.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, it stops her. And she kind of grabs a pair of shorts that she wore coming in there that day. I remember if it was shorts or what's them other ones, the longer ones called?
Capri.
Capris. I think that's what she said. Slips them on and then goes out, and the fire's starting to die down. Now she's got a bunch of wood stacked up, little limbs and so on and so forth. And she throws this in the makeshift fire pit that she made. Fire kicks back up, and she sees something reflecting from the firelight. And it's standing there, both eyes looking at her. She screams, runs and dives in her tent, and she hears this thing run off. Now she's scared. So most of the night she runs in, puts her shirt back on, and she's there in a shirt and short capris, and she slipped her boots on, and she's sitting out there by the fire, and she's got it built up pretty good. In fact, she even built another fire closer to the creek. And, she finally goes to bed around 3 o'clock. Well, she wakes up around 10, 11 o'clock in the morning because she was tired. She gets outside of her tent and she sticks her head out. She's looking around. She don't see anything. She keeps looking around. She gets out. She fixes herself something to eat. She heats water up and eats one of those meals. She didn't tell me what kind. I don't know if she had biscuits and gravy or what, but she said it was a good meal. So now at this point, she's like, I'm gonna go down to the stream. I'm gonna go get more wood. So she goes and she triples the amount of wood she's got there at her camp. She's made in her mind that she's going to have 3 fires that night, and she's going to stay up late, keep them all up, and then before she goes to bed, she's going to build them up so they'll keep whatever that thing was. The eye shine was the night before. Now the eye shines, she said, was like to the sides of her head, wide. That's a big, ugly booger to be that big. I don't know if it was ugly. It might have been on the level of Leonardo DiCaprio or Brad Pitt. Who knows? But in my estimation, it probably wasn't. So she starts her 3 fires at dark. She done went down to the stream that afternoon after she got all the wood stocked up. She's got 3 big piles of limbs at each fire pit. She builds a fire in the main one and then carries a couple of sticks on fire over here to this. And she gets this one going, and then she's got this one next to the stream going. And she's kind of walking between them all night. And she don't know what time it is. She didn't look at her watch. She just heard a big stick break and looked across the stream. And at that point, this Bigfoot is just across the stream. And it's standing over there doing something to a tree that I'm not going to say. But if you're very old, think about what a dog does to your leg, and you'll have the picture. Now she's clothed, and she's like screaming. This thing takes off running. Well, that night it's pretty warm. Now it's during the week. There's not a lot of people in the woods. On weekends, there's a lot of hikers and everything, but it's during the week this is going on. It's getting close to the weekend. She went out in the middle of the week, like on Wednesday. So this was probably Thursday night going into Friday. And she does the dumbest thing that I think she could have done at this point. She goes into her tent, undresses, and I see that, Chris. I'm not saying that. I'm not touching that. She goes into her tent and undresses because it's so hot. And evidently, she didn't get the fly for the tent zipped, the screen, because you zip it down and then on both bottoms it zips up.
Sure.
So she's laying there and she falls asleep. Now, the tent that she's in, she sleeps this way in front of the doors because the tent screens here. And then in the back of it, there is a slit at the bottom that is also screened. And there's a window just above that draws air through the tent. And all of her stuff's on the sides. Now she's got the two little light strings that she has on. Sorry, I was getting a little dry. And at that point, she gets woken up because she feels something touching her. And you can guess probably where she's getting touched. I'm not touching that. No, she's a pretty lady, just not no common sense. Blonde hair. And she starts moving. It's infecting. This wakes her up. She sits up on her elbows because she didn't have the zip. She didn't have the sleeping bag across her. She was laying on the sleeping bag. And she looks out through the screen door and she sees this thing arm inside the tent and it's touching her. And then she sees the face at the end of the arm. She screams. This thing screams, runs off, and she jumps up, comes out of the tent, builds all three fires up as bright as she can get them, puts half of the wood that she has on these three fires. She stays up all night long with these three fires running wide open. She don't spare the wood. She puts a bunch of wood on them and keeps them that way, keeps them built up. The next morning at daylight, she starts breaking her tent down. She gets her tent put into the backpack, gets everything put away in her backpack. She's dressed, thank God, and she starts back to the trail to head back to her car. Now, on the way back to the trail, this creature kind of gets off to her right side of her as she's heading out and starts making uh, 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 those type of noises. Not going any further with that. And she sees this creature doing what he was doing across the creek from her. And it's showing itself. And she gets scared. So she starts running for all that she's got back to this trail, hoping that someone is on the trail. She doesn't think she can outrun this creature. Well, when she took off running, it started running too to keep up with her. And it's, uh, the heavy breathing they do because it's exerting itself. And she gets to the trail and runs right smack dab into this young couple. And she's screaming, "Did y'all see that? Do you see what was in the woods?" And they're like, "Ma'am, what are you talking about? We haven't seen a thing." And then this thing does. The couple looks over and goes, "What in the HE double hockey sticks is that?" She's like, "This thing has been following me, and it's been around my camp 2 or 3 times. I'm leaving. I'm going to run to my car, get in my car, and drive off." Well, the couple goes with her, safer in numbers. They get to their cars. Now, this thing has stopped following them when they got to the trail. They just didn't think it was. They thought it was still following. They go down the road, and on the way out, this lady just about puts a park ranger into the freaking ditch. She stops, the couple stops, and the park ranger is like, "What is wrong with you, lady? You just about killed me." She tells him that this big hairy creature has been messing around with her all week at her camp where she camped out. And she tells the park ranger where she camped. And he said, "Didn't you see the signs? They're right there at the mouth of that hollow. This area is off limits." Couple didn't see the signs either because they told the park ranger the same thing. So she leaves. She then is trying to figure out what these creatures are. Comes across our channel and gives me a call. So that's the account. If you got a question, please put it all in capital letters. Let's not do the funny questions. Please. I don't need my wife elbowing me in the ribs. If you want to move on to the Arkansas cliff dwellers and don't want to ask questions, then put a yes on the screen in the comment section. She said it was about 7.5 foot tall. So it probably was a juvenile that found her attractive. Sure, somebody doesn't want to have her phone number. She's got money. No common sense, but has money. So it was probably just a beta male and didn't have a partner. Jimmy, that's probably the reason that it took an affection towards this woman. No, not yet. Okay. You got another question, Jimmy? Go right ahead. I get you, Charmaine. I get it. Neil's ready to go. Okay. If you're ready, we're going to go to Arkansas, to the Cliff Dwellers. And I'll give you a little bit of intel on this one. This one, they find human remains inside of the caves in that cliff. This family, this couple, they used to do a lot of tent camping when they were younger. And when their son was little, they used to take him all the time. Then he got older, and what happens to most young males when they reach 13, 14, 15 years old? Well, the typical thing happens. They find out that girls are pretty and they smell good. Not as good as my wife or as pretty as my wife, but they smell good and look pretty.
Thank you. I
Did I get brownie points?
maybe cheesecake point.
Wow. Cheesecake. Anyways, finally this boy, he's into basketball, he plays football. He's got a girlfriend that's a cheerleader. I know. Plays on a varsity team in football, plays on a varsity team for basketball. He's got some height on him. He's 6'3" or something. And from what I understand, he's a very good basketball player and he's a very good football player. He does his job on both of them. He enjoys playing. He finally talks his family in the month of, what was it, late September they went up there? I know it was after Memorial Day or Labor Day. I just can't remember if it was the last week of September or first week of October. I think it was the first of October.
Maybe
Right?
so. Maybe so, yeah.
Now there's this place that his buddies go to. It's in a state forest there in Arkansas. And it's got a waterfall. The big pool underneath of it, and there's fish in it. And the stream that goes down from the pool has got all kinds of trout in it. And it's a pristine area in a state forest. So, and there's a camping site there at that pool that the waterfall comes down and goes into. So at that point, he talks his parents into going camping. Now they go out and buy the best of the best tents, cots, everything. And he talks them into letting his girlfriend come. Now the girlfriend can't go until Saturday morning. She's going to meet him in the parking lot. Now him and the father and the mother, they carry all their gear up there to this place. It's only a quarter of a mile walk. It's not bad, and it's not up a big grade or anything like that. It just kind of slowly moves up above the stream, and then you come out of the opening. There's this pool there and a waterfall, and it's pretty place. And they have, the dad and the son have to make two more trips to gather all their stuff out of the car, food, drinks, everything else they need. And mom is up there setting up cots, getting all the sleeping bags unrolled. Well, Patrick, hold on a second. Let me finish reading your question and I'll answer it. The Ohio grassman is not the biggest, baddest Bigfoot in North America, nor is the Yahoo. The biggest, baddest, ugliest Bigfoot in the United States is the one that I call Janoskwa, the man-eating cannibals Bigfoot, the cannibalistic Bigfoot. Those are the biggest, baddest ones that you don't ever want to meet. They will hunt you. And you can't turn like that. Ah,
I don't know. Very tiny.
see what I got to do? Anyway, those are the baddest Bigfoot in North America. Don't play around with them. So they get everything carried up there. They get the tents set up. They got two tents because the mom and the girlfriend are going to sleep in one, and dad and son are going to sleep in the other one. It's easy to set them up. They're almost like pop-ups. They got a stove there. They've got everything they need. Lanterns, everything to stay there, fishing gear. So they get it all set up Friday evening. They have dinner. Mom fixes dinner. Dad helps a little bit. And they're all sitting around enjoying their time. Yeah, all over the North America. That means Canada, Alaska, United States, Mexico. And at this point, they don't do any fishing. It's Friday night. It's dark. They have a pretty good night. No trouble happens. Next morning, the boy goes down to get his girlfriend, meet her down there at the parking lot. She pulls in, and she's got a little bit of this, a little bit of that, which is surprising for most teenage girls. They go up there, a little way up, they kind of get the feeling that somebody's watching. And they kind of mess around, and there's a few little rocks and they're thinking they're acorns falling out of a tree or limbs, small limbs. So they get back up there, and he's like, I'm going to teach you how to fish. Well, they go back down the stream a little ways from the pool and go down there, and they catch a few fish. She actually kicks his butt, but I'm not going to say how bad. And at that point, they go ahead and Excuse me. I'm an old man. I'm getting tired. I apologize. So at that point, they go back to camp. Mom and the girl clean the fish, and they're very mindful about where they put the innards from the fish. And they kind of take them way over there, and they get lanterns and they get the fish prepared, and they fillet them, and they make a really nice trout dinner with a little bit of rice, some lemon juice, and it's very good food, and they enjoy it, and they're sitting around talking. Well, do you remember what started this at this point? What started all the trouble?
Hmm. I remember
At this point,
happenings, you know.
there's a huge rock that comes off from the top of the waterfall, lands in the middle of the pool, goes splash. And they're like, what in the world was that? What happened? Their dad's like, oh, it's just a boulder come off the top of the hill. It'd be all right. Ain't no big deal. Don't worry about it. Well, about 10, 15 minutes goes by. Splash! Dad jumps up. So does the boy. Because he saw Dad jumping up. He's like, this ain't going to be good. Let's start some lanterns. Let's get all the lanterns lit. They got 3 or 4 lanterns they light up, to light up their camping area really well. So a couple of hours go by. Then they hear, ooh, 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 ooh. And the mother says, when did we get monkeys in Arkansas? Baby, I don't know, but I'm not sure that's a monkey. And then they hear, "Ah!" That's no dang monkey. So now they're scrambling. They got a fire there. They build the fire up. All these lanterns are on full. They built a couple more little fire pits to light the area up better than the lanterns are lighting. They turn all their flashlights on. They see something at the top of the waterfall. Now it looks big. They can't tell. Their flashlights are not strong enough to light this thing up. But it looks big, and it looks like it might be covered in hair, or it might be moss, or something that looks like it's long, hanging from its arms. Because it was up there with its arms up like this. And they said they could see what looked like hair hanging down off each arm. And it starts pounding its chest and just kind of like building itself up. Now the ladies are scared. Dad goes into the tent that he was going to sleep in that night with his son, and comes out with a big handgun. So he is going to protect his family. And do what he has to protect his family. Well, they make it through the night. They see this thing pacing back and forth on top up there around on the ledge. all night long. The dad and the son, the dad doesn't go to sleep at all. The mom doesn't get much sleep. The girlfriend is terrified. I doubt she slept either. The son got maybe an hour's of sleep, hour and a half. Because everybody slept in that one tent. And that's where dad sat at the fire, putting wood on the fire. His wife ended up coming out and sitting out there with him. And she made coffee a couple of times. And they drank coffee and they kept watching this thing walk back and forth. So the next morning, they make their minds up. They're not breaking tents down. They're not carrying these things out. They are going to do their level best to get these things to get out of there. They said, screw the tents, screw the equipment. It's just money and ain't worth it. It's not worth our lives. So they send the boy and the girlfriend down the trail. The mother is in the middle, and dad is basically walking backwards down the trail and carrying the handgun. Now, on the way out, this thing starts following them and showing itself on the trail. It then there's a bend, and on the outside of that bend, if you look back up just across the stream, there's a couple of caves on this sheer rock cliff. They see forms walking out into the sunlight coming out of the caves. The dad sees this. He hollers at the son, and he turns around and looks and instantly sees the movement. And he tells his wife, don't turn around, just keep walking. Don't stop. So at that point, he tells them to kind of pick the pace up. And he turns around. Now, this creature is following him at 50, 60 yards down the trail. Well, at one point, he stops and turns around, and he's made his mind up. They're within 100 yards of the parking area. And they can see other cars in the parking area besides their two. And he hollers up in front and tells his son, get your girlfriend in the car. Mom's getting in the car, our car, and we're getting in and we're leaving. Y'all get to the car quick, take off running, and get to the car and leave. Well, they take off running. He sees them leave. He tells his wife, this thing is getting closer. I don't know how much longer it's before it's on top of me. I want you to run and get to the car. You have a key. Get in it. Leave me. If I'm not right on your tail, leave me. So at that point, the mother takes off running. Now, dad gives her a little bit of time. He turns around, he sees this creature jump across the path and fires his firearm. Actually throws a couple of shots in its direction. This thing doesn't cry out in anger or fear or anything. Or if it's injured, it's not crying out. So he kind of starts walking backwards down the trail again. He's not running. At this point, he shoots, he gets another 20, 30 yards down the trail, and this thing steps out in the trail and looks at him, and he shoots at it a couple more times. At that point, he puts the handgun away and runs towards the car. When he gets to the car, the wife is just starting the car. He goes around and grabs the door handle, and she throws it in drive and almost drags him down the road. He's holding on because this creature is coming. And at that point, he's like, I'm going to die. She doesn't know it's me. I'm going to die. Finally, she stops because she sees the top of her husband's head. He's bald headed like I am. And he gets his feet, gets the car door open, and leaves. Gets in the car and she floorboards it. Now, they get all the way home. And they get a phone call a few days later from the park ranger saying, hey, you left all your stuff up here at this pool, a place you're not supposed to be camping. It's posted not to go any further up the trail. And they tell him, no, it's not posted. So he goes out and investigates. There's no posting signs there saying, do not go here. Do not try to camp here. Do not fish anywhere above here. So all this goes on, and that's the full account for you in Arkansas. I know it didn't have blood and guts in it. I apologize. But I think them living is a very poignant thing. And I'm glad they made it out. So if you got a question for me, put it all in caps, and I'll be glad to answer your question. Otherwise, we're going to be signing off here in about a minute and a half. And I hope y'all have enjoyed tonight. I thank you all for coming. And I hope that each and every one of you have a blessed and wonderful new year. We good?
I don't see anybody putting up anything.
Okay. We're going out with the intro. Is there a question?
We got some thank yous.
Well, we thank each and every one of y'all for coming tonight.
Yes, we do.
And this will end our live tonight. I hope you have a wonderful new year.
Good night and Happy New Year.
Charmaine, my wife just saw your question. Yes. On Route 3 side. And what is that runs out of Madison? That side of the hill too. To answer your question, yes. So y'all have a wonderful and blessed night. We're out of here. Thank y'all for coming. Thank you for everything y'all done for us. And keep us coming back. We thank y'all. Bye-bye.
Thank you.